Max Brantley with the Arkansas Times on Wednesday, April the 5th. Well, let's look to Washington today to start things with. Last night, President Donald Trump met with Republican members of Congress, and they were again unable to come to a deal on moving forward with a replacement for the Affordable Care Act, otherwise known as Obamacare. The problem remains just about the same as it was before. The hard-righted Republican Party wants to go a lot farther in dismantling Obamacare. There's some moderates in the party that want to continue some of the important benefits that law brought to America and not throw so many people off. The continuation of coverage from people with pre-existing conditions is a big part of it. That was a very popular thing. U.S. Representative Steve Womack gave an extensive interview after the talks broke down. He's coming home to a town hall in Bentonville next week. He said he expects people to be a little frustrated. He said after all, the Republicans were elected to lead and come up with solutions, and they haven't been able to do so yet. He remarked, too, that Donald Trump is learning, that is, if Donald Trump can learn anything, that it's a little harder to do deals in government than it is in the private business. No kidding. French Hill, the U.S. representative from Little Rock, remains absent without leave, missing in action, still hasn't met the public, still avoiding questions on this, and also avoiding questions on his decision to take a walk, on that very controversial bill that allows social media companies to sell private information they get from their members. He hadn't talked about that in public either, so that's something to watch. Executions remain much in the news in Arkansas. The state parole board said today that it had voted 6-1 to recommend executive clemency for Jason McGee, one of 8 people scheduled to die later this month in a series of executions over 10 days. He killed a 15-year-old in Harrison about, 21 years ago. He was only 20 at the time he committed the crime. Lawsuits are continuing in federal court that challenge the speedy process for the clemency review period and also other elements about the crime. As of now, the executions are scheduled to take place late yesterday afternoon on the story I mentioned yesterday. The Arkansas Supreme Court stayed a decision by Wendell Griffin to force the State Department of Correction to release some information about the drugs that are going to be used in the execution process. A lawsuit has been filed seeking more information about that to ensure that the drugs are legitimate and proper for use in this process. Interesting news story out of Northwest Arkansas today. Walmart, the retail giant based in our state, is cutting quite a few jobs in its Arkansas operations, both at Walmart and Sam's Club, several in the technical division. This is somewhat interesting because it's adding hundreds of jobs in California in the technical division, also shipping some jobs to a third-party contractor in India. I thought we created an incredible atmosphere for job creation and economic development in Arkansas in the last session. We don't pay people here much. We don't give employees many rights, and we're supposedly just going great guns on teaching computers. Don't you think people want to locate jobs in Arkansas and not California or India? Apparently not currently. The 7th Circuit U.S. Court of Appeals in Chicago yesterday issued a landmark ruling. It said that the federal civil rights law applies to gay people. It was a case of a lesbian who said she wasn't hired because of her sexual orientation. This is a landmark case. It won't be finally law until the Supreme Court decides that there's a contrary opinion in another circuit. Nothing in the Arkansas circuit yet, but if gay people are provided the equal protection coverage of the law, it means a great deal. It also means that Arkansas's law that aims to preserve legal discrimination against gay people in hiring, public accommodations, and housing won't stand up. You know, this happened during the racial period. People tried to assert a religious right to discriminate against people based on race. The U.S. Supreme Court said no, that was not the law, that if religion could not be cited to as contravention to public policy. So gay rights advances in some places, at least, if not in Arkansas. The Arkansas Advocates for Children and Families, which has worked for years for the interest of children and families in Arkansas, has issued a legislative report. You can read the full thing on the Arkansas blog at arkansasblog.com. So the legislature actually did some good things, mostly small. It did continue the health care program that expanded Medicaid coverage for Arkansas, but it didn't do much for education, did nothing for highways, and there's still a great deal of concern about what the future holds for some of these programs because we shrunk the state budget by some $300 million in tax cuts. Ultimately, that has to come out of services. Back to Washington for a minute. There's a new report out that says Neil Gorsuch, the nominee for the U.S. Supreme Court by Donald Trump, used big chunks of other people's writings, almost word for word, in some things he's written. Some people call that plagiarism. The Trump administration says this is just fake news, that he merely didn't credit people's stuff for stuff that he copied from others. But I don't know how that's a defense, but that's what they said. The Little Rock Police Department has hired a new sensitivity trainer. There's something of a problem of appearance in Little Rock. This is a city that's about 40% black. It has a 65% white police force, but more than 70% of the people arrested are black. Perhaps there's some sensitivity training that's necessary. There's an ongoing court trial in federal court in Little Rock today against Josh Hastings that says that Josh Hastings deprived a criminal suspect of his civil rights by killing him during the investigation of car burglaries. Hastings was acquitted twice, not acquitted, but in 2 trials on a criminal charge ended in a hung jury, but there's a different standard on the civil car case. Interesting report out of the Atlantic that I mentioned on Arkansas Blog today about carmageddon. As you know, Atlanta's just had a huge freeway disaster because of a fire. They thought it would create a massive traffic problem in Atlanta because it's a major freeway that carries a huge amount of traffic. Well, it didn't happen. Didn't happen in Minnesota when that big Mississippi River Bridge collapsed. Didn't happen in Los Angeles when they closed 10 miles of a major freeway. Didn't happen in Little Rock when they closed the Broadway Bridge. Guess what? People make adjustments. They drive at different times. They go different routes. Some of the received wisdom about freeways that the only solution to traffic is build them ever wider with more concrete and more lanes. Maybe not so wise after all. It's a great piece. I recommend you read it. I wish the Arkansas Department of Highways would read it. I'm calling them DOE now after Homer Simpson's famous acronym, because they just don't seem to want to look at different ways of looking at things, including induced demand created by ever wider freeways. Well, that's it for me. I'm still resisting. I'll be back tomorrow. I'm Max Brandley.